Harrison Price for Monday, March 31st, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the Historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner. Did you get another one last night?
Just trying to get an update.
They give you any?
Shutout this year.
Oh, shutout this year.
10 years straight. 10 years straight.
Really? It's quite a Rory McIlroy-like drought.
S&P was not nominated for any of our musical exploits, which to me feels like a slap in the face based on all the singing that I've done on this show.
Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things. Blake Price singing. Entertaining. A regular Wayne Newton.
Putting work in.
Work in the room.
Yeah.
Vancouver Canucks. Well,
it's been fun.
That's that. What sums up your feelings on the Canucks season? We've done this one before, sadly.
Yes,
partner.
we have.
You can vote for sad. You can vote for angry. You can vote for disappointed. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Where did you cast your ballot?
Somewhere between sad and disappointed. I'll go sad because I think for the market, there was high hopes after last season. I think angry is on the table because of the JT Miller thing. And, I think you would be forgiven if that has really just colored your season and you thinking if that isn't there, are the Canucks 5 points? But that's a 5-point difference. That room disruption is at least a 5-point difference, isn't it? That's all you need right now.
If it had not been 2 months ago, I wonder how much angry would have got voting-wise. But the trade happened 2 months ago. The writing was on the wall 3 to 4 months ago.
But the damage was done.
People have had time to absorb that and deal with their anger on that.
Canuck fans deserve better, so I'm going sad. But I think it's pretty easy to get to angry. And I find disappointing a little bit of you're too muted if you're just disappointed. If you're just you're too calm and level. I want you to be more moved than just disappointed.
Voting disappointed. I guess I'm too muted.
I think so. Get in touch with your feelings, Matthew.
Honestly,
probably heard that one
between
before.
The head cold I have and the little matter I'm visiting St. Paul's for here, I can't muster anger or sad right now.
Oh, it hurts too much.
Yeah. Disappointed. I can make a case for all three. You just did so eloquently. Like I said, if the Miller thing had come to a head a little sooner or not so long ago, I think anger could have gotten more of this vote. I just don't feel like anger is right below the skin right now. I think that's a little more deep-seated.
I think people are also angry at Elias Pettersson, right or wrong.
Yes.
Right or wrong. I think people are angry at Elias Pettersson for his season. Regardless.
Correct.
Yeah.
I can understand sadness in the case that you laid out, but disappointed because, look, everything went right last year, true to Rutherford's mouth. Everything went wrong this year. Some of that is comeuppance that should have been expected, should have been a little easier to see, but, fans don't think that way. They're hopeful. They're optimistic. Everyone's a contender in preseason. Everyone's going to build on their season, right? No backward steps. So I get that as well. There were some things about this year that I thought this franchise would have been beyond. First of all, chasing size and the terrible offseason that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin had. Not being able to identify and fix the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson matter sooner. Also something that I would have thought this organization had a better handle on. We talked about how ruthless Rutherford was, right? This was not ruthless. This was cross your fingers and hope. And I don't blame them. Your best route to Stanley Cup contention was having both those players going, but your job is to get ahead of it. You didn't. And you made a step-back trade. Knowingly made a step-back trade because of it. That hurt the franchise this year. That could well hurt the franchise for multiple years going forward, particularly if Filip Chytil is unavailable because of his concussions. And then Rick Tocchet, it was not a great year for the coach. I mean, he ended last season telling us he knows they've got to score more off the rush. He's going to put his heart and soul and mind, and they're going to brainstorm all summer and find. Look, some of it is personnel related, to be sure, but coach came back, and I don't necessarily feel like built off his campaign last year, built on his program, his structure, his style for a playing group that absolutely needed that.
Yeah, it's, I think the offseason is going to be a really interesting one. And the coach is where it all swings on. Players that you acquire, especially free agents, are going to want to know who the coach is. Quinn Hughes is going to want to know who the coach is. Style of play, all of that. Yeah, we're going to have a long time to discuss this, and we don't need to get too deep into the weeds of next season just yet. But needless to say, I think what he's got out of the players this year is interesting. I think there's cases to be made. I mean, look at the road trip that we are going to discuss here, Matt. Hughes Suter, marvelous. Freaking marvelous. Kiefer Sherwood, a hell of a road trip. And these are players that flourished under Tocchet. Others, not so much. Although, Brock Besser, for that matter, had a great road trip.
Yes. I mean, we did it last week. You can go through the players who got better this year under this coaching staff, or the players who have gotten better over the entirety of Rick Tocchet's tenure on the Vancouver Canucks.
Some are in both. Some are in both.
Some are in both.
To go to Joshua's in both.
Yeah. Joshua, for sure, is in both. Höglander is in both.
It is in both. Yeah.
Yeah. But, this year, Suter, Sherwood, Myers, Forbert, lesser extent, Garland.
Yeah.
These are all guys who have taken steps in their career. Our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi want to reward you when your favorite hockey team scores some. Now, just the one goal.
This weekend, though.
Sunday.
This weekend was your time to
I hope you
purchase
got in
a
there
car.
after Friday and the 6-goal barrage, because we're capped at 5 here. Every goal, $500 off a new or pre-owned vehicle at Surrey Mitsubishi. You got to mention Sekerson price. It is valid till the next game day. Do check out the lot, 13820 104th Avenue. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. The weekend the music died. They take just one of 4 points to end a 6-game road trip 2-2-2. They watch St. Louis win for a 9th consecutive time.
Yeah, and what that has done now is made all of our prognostications. Like, I remember going into the road trip, Matt. Jeff Paterson came on this show and said, look, 3-3 keeps them in the playoff conversation, but they really need to go 4-2, which was a reasonable thing to say in that moment when we thought that the Blues were made up of mere mortals. When they have shown themselves to be demigods, I mean, what would you need to make the playoffs now? 96 points? Is that really where we've gotten to? So
I think you got to win 7 of 8 here.
The Canucks might have needed to go 4-1-1 on that road trip. So even if they win that last game, they would have had a 3-1-2 road trip. That sounds completely reasonable. Except I still don't know that would have been enough, given what the Blues are doing.
They are 6 back with a game in hand against St. Louis. They are 1 point ahead of the Calgary Flames, who have 2 games in hand on them.
Yeah.
It was a 3-1 loss in Winnipeg, where they played hard.
Did it?
They played well. They played the sort of game that they need to play to beat a team of that quality.
20-minute game. Got down to the
exactly.
third period.
Get through the first 40 minutes in the ball game and see if you get a bounce, a break, a chance, a finish, what have you. Maybe a fortunate penalty on the opposition in the final 20 minutes. Here's Coach Tocchet.
Well, I got a couple days to regroup. You just got to worry about the next game. I'm sure the guys are disappointed. It's a 1-1 game going to third. Seems like we've had a lot of these over the last bunch of times, and we're coming. Thought lately we've been coming up with some nice plays, nice moments, but tonight we're just on the wrong side.
That next game is Wednesday against Seattle. It's the first of a 3-game homestand. Saturday against Anaheim. Sunday, back-to-back against the Ducks. Incidentally, Saturday's a 1 p.m. game, everybody, so we're not done with these matinee starts just yet. He's going to continue to talk about they're in it, right? So park it and move on to the next game. Sure, easier said than done. He said they've been in a lot of these style games. Well, they have, but let's remember that's the NHL, right? Most games are close in the third period. And you don't have difference makers, really. With Quinn Hughes playing through something and being leaned on as hard as he's being leaned on, and with Elias Paterson really being the only other offensive maestro, if you will. I mean, DeBrusk and Boeser, don't get me wrong, are good players, but they're somewhat dependent on others getting them the puck. Suter only has so many tricks in his bag.
Do you know that the Vancouver Canucks have led every single game that they have played since when? March 11th.
Wow.
They have
That
led
is a long list.
in every single
How many
game.
games is that?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10 games. They've
my.
led in all of those games.
They led that Utah game?
Yep.
1-0?
Yep.
Well.
And what they have to show for that since then is a 5-3-2 record.
And we're going to get to Friday here in Columbus. But letting the huge leads get away.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of games to point to of how did that happen. Now, they've had some last-second game savers as well, but a couple of times you put yourself in the position where that last-second game saver shouldn't mean anything. Like the last second, well, it wasn't last second, but late game saver in Columbus. Like, you shouldn't put yourself in that position. I think you can say that about the Blues game, too. You shouldn't put yourself in that position to need that late goal. Should have won the game anyway. So I think they end up coming out on the losing end of things, given that they have given away so many multi-goal lead and 3-goal leads. Like, that's on you.
Here's Tyler Myers. Coach said he was proud of him. Here's Tyler Myers about the road trip and what was lost.
The guys worked really hard tonight. We battled right to the end. It was a couple unfortunate breaks there in the third. And then it's hard to come back. That team defends pretty well. When they get the lead, it was tough for us to, get to the net. Something we can look at. But we gotta stay positive, come out next game and try and win a hockey game.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have some semblance of a push. I do wonder though, like the math is so terrible for them now.
Yes.
I wonder what this looks like.
You have to fight against psychology.
Yeah.
In the near term here, you have to fight against your own attitude, your own feelings, the enormity of the task. Myers retreated to one game at a time.
Well, here's the problem too, Matt.
I would argue there's a correlation between one game at a time and how a team is doing.
Here's the problem. They don't play much this week. No. And everybody else does. So, like, the Blues are playing 2 games in this business week. The Canucks only play 1. If the Blues win both of those games, no matter what the Canucks do on Wednesday, if the Blues win both of those games,
yes.
Like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the Blues, and it would still be false hope, I think, but if the Blues dropped both of these games and you win yours, yeah, then you probably find a reason to get up for the weekend games. You probably do. You probably convince yourself, okay, here's our opening.
Mm-hmm.
But you're you don't have the control of the Blues.
No. Blues play Tuesday at home to Detroit.
And then they play Thursday as well.
You know.
Again, they get 3 even points if they go 1-0-1. Like,
they get 2, Blake. I mean,
yeah, you're right. It's a punch in the gut.
7-6, they lose in Columbus on Friday. They blow a 3-0 lead, a 5-3 lead early in the third period. They require a late goal from Räty to force overtime. They didn't just blow a 5-3 lead. They had to chase the game and find an equalizer late from a rookie.
They hemorrhaged in the third period.
They sure did.
Against a team below them in the overall standings.
Yeah. Garland in the shootout over Boeser. Lekkerimäki not shooting till the third spot.
I saw it written. Those are the 3 highest shootout percentage guys on the team. So you could argue gut feel. You should have gone with other people, but statistically speaking, they were not terrible.
Was Lankinen the wrong call? Dollywall said he's got a hip issue. Was Lankinen the wrong call for this game?
Well, I said I liked that call. I like this order of goaltending if Lankinen was 100%. So only they know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I sure hope Thatcher was given the option, as we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Demko, who's on a heater, and go, look, do you feel like you want to keep it going here, keep the momentum riding on Friday? If so, it's yours. If you feel like you'd prefer the rest now as opposed to Sunday against Winnipeg, let us know.
And it almost worked. I mean, Demko was good against the Jets. I think he wants the 1-1 goal back. But ultimately, they get 3 in the end anyway.
So here's the thing. And the playoffs are not yet lost, but they're sure looking that way. The Canucks are 1-6 this year against Winnipeg, Vegas, and Dallas combined. And they have more games against these teams.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas here Sunday, at Dallas a week from tomorrow. Vegas here again on April 16th to end the regular season. So, I mean, there is a school of thought, even if you make the Stanley Cup playoffs, how far are you going given the quality of opponent you're likely to face?
Oh, and given your health status.
That too.
You know, hey,
we all know Vegas gets
God bless them for going 2-2-2, given who's in the lineup.
Right.
Honestly,
there was a lot of effort.
Yeoman's work.
Honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why Angry isn't getting as much of the vote, Blake.
Yeah.
On our poll is, you don't get angry at a dog because it barks. That's what dogs do.
No, but this is at the end. That's why you shouldn't get angry.
It's hard to get upset at this team for falling short in some of these games. The Columbus game, okay, you can get real upset about that one. The Winnipeg game, that's just a better team than you.
But Matt, that's the answer. That's the reason why you don't get angry about this road trip. Certainly. For the season, I think there's reason to be angry on a number of fronts. But for the season, for the road trip, no. I mean, look at what they've got. It's no wonder that it went down as it did.
If you're scoreboard watching still, Minnesota at Jersey tonight. Bring Minnesota up because if St. Louis never loses again, and it's quite possible St. Louis never loses again, Minnesota's the team you're chasing. They're tied at 87 points. Minnesota has 1 game in.
The bottom needs to drop out, though.
Yeah.
They need to get 2 or 3 wins max the rest of the season.
And then Calgary's in Colorado. And, of course, Flames win puts them past Vancouver as the first team below the bar. I believe a tie, a loser point does as well because the Flames would have a game in hand.
This is the last day of March. This is your last. I cannot prognosticate what Yellow Dogs got up their sleeves for the beer on special for the month of April. But this might be your last chance to go get Chase My Tail on special. It's your favorite private and government liquor stores. That's tall can 4-packs. That's big. That's 12-pack of the regular cans, whichever you prefer. Go check it out.
Were you surprised they didn't challenge the Boone Jenner 5-5 goal Friday?
I think they thought they'd used up their freebie already.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be pretty blatant. Like, in any other situation, I'd say yes.
Yes, exactly.
But you just got away with one, maybe. And maybe they found out, I forget, was there an intermission in between? Or it was the same period?
No, same period.
Same period, yeah. I mean, I don't know if they would have found out later that that was a pretty iffy call you guys made on that.
Yeah.
But no, I think he thought he'd gotten away with one already. And
Yeah, that's where I was too. And of course, you get it wrong, there are big consequences.
yeah.
What about pulling the goalie down 2 yesterday?
I didn't-
Demko looked like he was ready to come, like he was ready for instructions, and the bench just didn't seem very interested in pulling the goalie.
I would have for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that.
No. I mean, very unlikely.
Yeah.
Snowball's chance, but you play to win the game and you pull out every stop.
And do you care if it's a 4-1 final?
Yeah, no, you don't. Goal differential is not going to be your tiebreaker here.
Yeah, and you've had some late game heroics of late, so why not try to capitalize on that?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. And I saw our friend Irf Gaffar tweeting, I'll say this about the Canucks and Rick Tocchet. Vancouver knows exactly what he wants in terms of money. The biggest thing is all this is Quinn Hughes. The captain and coach have an extremely good relationship. Not sure how a new coach system, lack of plan, would go over in that room.
Yeah, you do risk
Lack
upsetting the apple cart
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, lack of plan, I guess what Irf is referring to is plan B here if you're moving on from Tocchet. Surely the incoming coach would have a plan, but, plan B, is that something that puts you further behind with Quinn Hughes, your captain, who you're doing everything
Well, I think
in your power?
I think Rick Tocchet wants a plan though too, right? I think that's the other plan here at work is
Yes.
what are you going to do in the offseason to improve this team? Because there is we've sort of denigrated the Flyers as a possible option. There could be other openings too that he's interested in. There's not great teams over there in the Eastern Conference. But is there a world where those teams can pass the Canucks with a smart offseason? Yeah, there is. So the Canucks need to have a plan, and he needs to be convinced of it.
Let me ask this, though. Tocchet preaches commitment. He talks about, sacrificing for the team, right? You got to be in that spot. You got to trust your team. You got to go to the guts of the ice. You got to take a hit, body position, all these things. He's preaching that guys need to be all in. He's not all in. Beyond this year?
No.
Is that disconnect, you think, a problem? Has it been a problem for this team?
I've talked to ex-players about when they were in their playing days. And they maintain that in the course of a season, they do not think about what anybody's contract status is. Like, it is about every night.
Yeah, and I just don't believe that.
No?
Well, because I think when a coach is on the rocks, I think players are very aware of the conversation.
In the most extreme circumstances, like the Bruce Boudreau circumstances and stuff like that, sure, yes. And maybe I'll carve out a small thing for like a guy like Quinn Hughes in this situation. Has Quinn Hughes cast a thought about the future? Yes, maybe he
They're
has.
usually privy to more information than us, though. I would wonder how many Canuck players know that the team has made Rick an offer and he hasn't signed it.
I don't know. Some guys turn all that noise off.
And I would
don't
bet
know.
there would be some guys who know exactly what's happened there.
Yeah. I think it's
anyways,
variable.
We'll talk about this with Jeff, but Tocchet has been very clear about there's a job to do. That's my single and only focus.
Mm-hmm.
That is fine while the playoff dream is alive. At some point here, that is almost certainly going to end. At that point, I hope Rick would be wise enough to understand this market, to understand this fan base, to understand that his future with the Canucks becomes a big story, and to address it a little more appropriately than he has to date. Just with some fuller detail, just with a little explanation about how it got here and where it's going in his mind. Basically, do you want to be here coaching this team?
Mm-hmm.
Does management and ownership need to show you anything beyond money and term on the contract to convince you to stay here? I would like to know the answer to that question. Because right now, the rumblings are, the tea leaves are, that Rick Tocchet is not 100% convinced about coming back.
And is he?
And in his skates, I don't necessarily blame him.
And is he going to bring up what we have brought up of what the hell was that trade deadline? Like, if you bring in one little bit here, maybe that's the little bit that gets us 1 or 2, 3 more points.
Honestly, Francesco Aquilini got the deadline that he wanted in terms of no sell-offs and keep everyone for a playoff push. Patrick Alvin got the trade deadline he sort of wanted in terms of no backward steps, so I can look good to the ownership. Susie, the only one out there, didn't want to pay the prices on rentals. And guess what? Those two gentlemen were satisfied, and the totality of Canucks Nation and their fans were not. Because now the likelihood of getting anything for Boeser is slim to none. Now I suppose you got to re-sign Suter the way he's played, right? And given your dearth of center iceman and the issue with Filipino and the concussions. And you didn't get any kind of reinforcements and watch this paper-thin lineup not get the job done down the stretch because you didn't add to it.
And here's the thing.
And you're stuck in the mushy middle with the draft pick, too. You were likely going to be no lower than 15, no higher than 13.
Right. And that needs to be underscored here. I don't want to hear about tanking the rest of the way here, folks. Look at the standings. Because if you think they can get anywhere close to the Columbus Blue Jackets or Detroit Red Wings, well, Jackets might get into the playoffs, so by virtue of that, they might jump up above the Canucks. But let's say the Red Wings and Islanders at 74 points apiece, who are in the 11th spot. If you believe that they can sink as low as that, then you should be believing that the Canucks can make the playoffs. It's the same margin of difference. It's a 7-point difference. If you think the Islanders are overcoming a 7-point difference to overtake the Vancouver Canucks, got oceanfront property in Saskatchewan for it.
Yep.
It's not like if you believe in one thing, you got to believe in the other. Then the Canucks are still in the playoff hunt.
Yep.
It's not happening. The Canucks, as Matt said, it is a 13th to 16th overall pick. That's what they're getting. So if you want to tank for the 13th, by all means.
We'll ask
Great
Cam
strategy.
We'll ask Cam Robinson. Is there a material difference between the player you get at 13 and 16 this year? Lekkerimäki was 15th overall. Wielander was 11th. I think scouts would tell you both of those drafts were a little better.
This is not a strong
than
draft.
this one.
Yeah.
Stand to be corrected on that, but so probably someone who's not quite that level of prospect, I would think.
Now, it could be, I think some people will quibble and say this draft, and we'll get the guys like Cam to verify this, but I think they would argue too that guys like that might be available everywhere in the top 20. It's just that there's no huge amount of difference makers at the top.
Fair. It's guys like that at 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's maybe
well,
what
speaking of Wielander, he and Aiden Celebrini and the BU Terriers, they beat Cornell 3-2 on Saturday.
Good for Cornell, by the way.
Oh, it's fun.
They forced those guys to overtime, too.
Yep. So they won the Toledo regional. They now face Penn State Saturday at 5:30 p.m. in the NCAA Frozen Four in St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken. Denver plays Western Michigan in the other semi. They play the late semi at 5:30 p.m. our time.
And what this means for Wielander is that, by virtue of making this, it's on the 10th. Really, it's 2 Canuck games that he could get into if they lose the semi. If they make the final, really the only viable game that he can get into for the Vancouver Canucks is the final game of the season. I doubt he's playing 20 hours later for the Vancouver Canucks. So really, it's the last game of the season if they make the final, which might ultimately solve and by the Canucks being out of it as well. They're not at any competitive disadvantage if they put him in the lineup for any of those games. Anyhow.
No, I was very skeptical they would put him in the lineup for a game of playoff consequence. Just drop him right in. Not if the defense was healthy. But at this stage of the game, you got nothing to lose. Hey, Blake, it's time to play the kids again.
Yeah. Well, hey, the kids. Did they discover
Kids have
something?
played some.
Did they discover something with Linus Karlsson? His net front, his ability to get shit done in front of the net is pretty impressive.
Pocket has previewed this.
Yeah.
Put it this way. He's worth more looks. Räty is worth more looks. Elias Paterson is worth more looks. Mancini is worth more looks. Lekramaki is worth more looks. Sasson is worth more looks. Mark your calendars, everybody. Thursday, April 10th. A big one in Colorado. Canucks Army
If that's a big
watch
one,
party.
the next week it will have been amazing.
RinkWide Vancouver will be there at Greta, 50 West Cordova. Doors at 5, game at 6. Presented by Fountain Tire. Come watch the game, eat great food, play in the arcade. Exciting giveaways, 50-50 draw and support Kids Sport Vancouver. GA tickets, $10 gets you in. Or snag a VIP ticket, $40 that includes a burger, beer, and a game card. Must be 19 plus to attend.
And we've already had suggestions inside the company here of
Yes.
draft lottery fund, perhaps, at the very worst.
You go to nationgear.ca for those tickets. Pat is going to join us. Then in the final segment today, we'll talk about the Caps and their result. Talk about the surging Vancouver Warriors. This is quite a story. From out of nowhere, the Vancouver Warriors and their new goaltender.
Now that's a playoff push.
That is a playoff push. And the Yankees reinvent the bat a century and a half later.
Because that's what they needed.
Honestly. The team most associated with hitting home runs may have just revolutionized the sport here in 2025.
Yay.
That's all coming up. Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I was not very good on the weekend. I lost some basketball games. I lost some hockey games. So you go.
You go. All right, I'll look to the Flames. And this is really their last gasp as well. And I suspect that they will go down swinging. And you know, Nazem Kadri's been very good here. He's had some timely points, contributed a lot. He's going to find his way onto the score sheet. Plus 180 for an anytime point for Nazem Kadri against the Avs.
He has been good of late. Well, I screwed up hockey and basketball on the weekend, so I'm going to go to baseball.
Okay.
And as much as I have hopes for Jay Starter, Bowden Francis this season, remember he was close to 2 no-hitters late last year. We've got Canadian Mike Soroka opposing him on the bump tonight at Rogers Center, now with the Washington Nationals. Soroka has been through hell and back on the injury front, you may know. You got to imagine it's special for the Calgary native to be back in the big leagues and making this start on Canadian soil. You'll remember Paxton threw a no-no there, right? Channeled the crowd, the energy, the excitement of pitching in Canada. And you're getting good value on the Nats at plus 145. So give me Soroka and the Nats over the Blue Jays. Once upon a time, this was Expos Blue Jays. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app. Use code NATION. Code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Jeff Paterson coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And this segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers. And you know the brand that has brought you electric vehicles from the get-go, like the famed Prius? They've got a new star in their electric lineup. It's the BZ4X, and it is perfect for West Coast living. A sporty, fun car to drive, and more than enough space as well to fit everything you need for your West Coast lifestyle. Go take one for a test drive at your local Pacific Toyota dealer. You can talk to them about the up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives that are available now, not to mention 3.29% APR financing for 36 months as well. The car will do the talking. Not literally. It's not one of those annoying old cars from the 80s that told you that your door was ajar. It doesn't do that. Don't worry. But you take one for a test drive. That's all you need to know. The BZ4X from Toyota. ShopToyota.ca.
Jeff Paterson is our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. He was a busy boy on the weekend as the Canucks take just one of 4 points available to them. The weekend the music died, Jeff? Or you give them any hope from here?
I'm distracted. Blake had me at talking cars. I was like having Knight Rider flashbacks. So.
I was going to say, what
Remember
cars
those?
talked in the 80s?
The Chrysler New Yorker. Your door is ajar. God, it was annoying.
Your
I'll
team
take your
is
word for
eliminated
it.
from the playoffs. Did you
Yes.
have a car that said that?
No, but we have heard it somewhere before.
The check engine light's been going for a while
Yeah.
with this group, and a few other of those warning signs and symbols on the dash. Friday night in Columbus, probably. You can't. You can't, for the third time this season, allow a 3-goal lead to get away. You can't have a 5. For me, the 3-0 in the first period, like, great start, but there's still a lot of time. It was the 5-3 lead in the third period, though. Like,
Right.
Go into lockdown, put plywood up across your net. Now, Kevin Lankinen didn't hold up his end of the bargain. Neither did Elvis Merzlikins. I mean, goals were going in. There was that one sequence, Räty at one end and Matejchuk at the other, and those were both imminently stoppable pucks, and it was just one of those nights. But unfortunately for the Canucks, been a few too many of those nights through the season. I did a mailbag at Canucks Army today, and somebody asked about sort of the through line between these epic collapses. And as I went back and I looked, opening night against Calgary, we all remember what happened the first game out of the Christmas break against Seattle, and then Columbus the other night. 3 different goaltenders. Like, you can't pin it on one of them. Still was an opening night, Demko against Seattle, and this one was Lankinen. So needed saves there, loose coverage defensively, abandoning all the staples and structure and all the other buzzwords that Rick Tocchet had. Look, I thought they played hard in Winnipeg, certainly for 40 minutes. I liked at the end of a road trip, going up against the top team in the National Hockey League with the best goaltender on the planet. They tightened up defensively. They did a lot of good things. They got the lead. Unfortunately, Jets kind of leaned on them in the third period, and ultimately, Canucks
And a
skated away
30-year
with
team
loss there.
A 30-year team could be an AHL team, and they played that well, and so they deserve that credit. I mean,
We played the clip earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. What did you make of the goaltending decisions, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, perfect world, I suppose, and we have the benefit of hindsight here. I would have rode Thatcher Demko into Columbus. I just think that was a game that was there for the taking. He was playing well. He had come off wins in Jersey and the Island against the Islanders, had days off between. Now, not out of the road, and we don't know. Remember, he hadn't played in 6 weeks, so maybe some of that was Thatcher Demko saying, give me a little rest here, and I'm ready to take on the Jets on Sunday. But every point matters. And clearly there were 2 points there in Columbus waiting for them, and especially the way that game unfolded. I think I would have gone Demko there, tried to get 3 straight wins, and then step into the ring, take your best swing against the Jets the way that they did at home a couple of weeks ago. Lankinen was in goal that night. So, was it a misstep? Maybe a little bit, but ultimately not armed with all of the information that the coaching staff has here. Just if we're playing the armchair quarterback game, I think I would have stuck with Demko in Columbus.
And it's tough when you can find the points so close by, right? It's one thing to regret the points in November and December. 2 in New York, the 1 in Columbus. It's right there, and that changes the forecast for this team. If they've got 3 more points at this stage, I mean, they still have to take care of business if they have those 3 more points. But yeah, that's a big 3-point swing on one road trip.
Yeah, and it's just kind of weird the way the road trip unfolded, that they rediscovered their offense minus top guys and with these plug-and-play players from Abbotsford. And so where for so long it was they just couldn't find that second or third goal on a given night. Here they scored up until the Winnipeg game, but just got a little loose defensively. And I guess that's a little bit of a surprise to me. And some of it, guys, is we have reached that point in the program here where it is now abundantly clear playing Quinn Hughes 30 minutes a night isn't a strategy.
No.
It's just not. As good as he is, and as much as he means to this team, he too has limits. And we've reached those. I think the last 3 games, quite frankly, and this is not a knock on Quinn, but I think the last 3 games, go back to the Island, Columbus, and Winnipeg, 3 of the most ineffective games for the Canucks' best player. And no surprise here. When you look at the workload in another 28-minute night in Winnipeg or afternoon in Winnipeg, guys, I was looking at this with Quinn's workload before the Four Nations break. So really the first 4 months of the season. Remember, Philip Hronek was gone for 6 months or 6 weeks. But they started the year with Juleson and Desharnais and, a mix. So this is up until the Four Nations break. Quinn was averaging 25 minutes and change since the Four Nations break. And we know that he didn't play in the Four Nations because he wasn't anywhere close to healthy enough. Since then, his average ice time in 13 games is 26 minutes and 32 seconds. So he has added a minute and a half to his workload since the Four Nations break, but also since Philip Hronek returned to the lineup and they added Marcus Paterson. Like, the whole idea here was to insulate Quinn Hughes, beef up this blue line. They've overhauled the blue line in season, and you're asking Quinn to play 90 seconds more per night. And of course, he played 4 minutes and 10 seconds of overtime the other night in Columbus. It's just too much. It's too much. And they're not maximizing. He wasn't the best player on the ice on a lot of nights in this road trip. And again, that's not a knock on him. He's given them everything he can, but the power play has gone quiet. That was part of the road trip story as well. That the game in Columbus was the only game of the 6 that the Canucks managed to score on the power play, and they got 2 against the Blue Jackets and still didn't win that hockey game. So moving forward here, among the many things that the Canucks have to sort out in the offseason is a strategy to maximize Quinn Hughes, but not run this guy into the dirt. And that's what they've done here. And I'll be really interested to see if he plays all 8 of the remaining games on their schedule.
Coaches usually play to the bitter mathematical end, so I suspect that will be the case. But do you think that's the one spot where maybe Rick Tocchet slows down just a little bit, like 24 minutes for Quinn Hughes? Is that the one place where he can say, hey, I'm not going to run this guy into the ground or risk injury for the player, for God's sake? Because that's my worry, is that he's lost his nimbleness, his creativity is diminished because I think he's exhausted. And if he got injured right now, my goodness, it would look bad on the Canucks, I think, running him out for 30 minutes a game.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. They've got 6 of their final 8 on home ice. I think it's been such a disappointing year at home that the paying customers deserve to see Quinn Hughes to some degree. If they chose to leave him at home entirely from that Dallas-Columbus or Dallas-Colorado road trip, he's no longer playing for the Norris. He's not playing for the Hart. I could see a world where you could carve out that sort of strategy, and you're right, limit his ice time in the other games, but those games, unfortunately, aren't going to matter to the Vancouver Canucks. So, yeah, I mean, I think, we got no information whatsoever when this team was out on the road here about, like, are we going to see Elias Pettersson or Nils Höglander or Philip Chytil again this year? Or any of those guys shut down with 8 games to go? We'll get a little bit of clarity, I think, when the team gets back to the practice rink on Tuesday. And these are now legitimate conversations for the Vancouver Canucks to have, and for us to have, about the Vancouver Canucks. Is who needs to play, what are you getting out of some of these guys, and the way that some of these younger guys are stepping in and seizing the opportunities, quite frankly, they're actually quite a likable bunch right now. Like, I'll give the Vancouver Canucks that much with the effort level. They don't go quietly, not enough wins in the big picture, but I'm kind of more intrigued to see what Aatu Räty could do with 8 more games at the NHL level, or, Linus Karlsson, I thought, had a nice road trip. The one guy that I want to see more from, quite frankly, like the Jersey game, we all came out of the Jersey game and it was Jonathan Lekkerimäki's world, right? I mean, that was the only goal that he scored on the road trip, and really otherwise, okay, the shootout goal too, the same night, but a little quiet the rest of the way. And that's to be expected with a 20-year-old still finding his way in the National Hockey League, but he only had 5 shots in the 5 games that he played. The power play was quiet, as we said. So If they can keep all these guys up, a few of them are up on emergency recalls, but the ones that can stay, play them. And let's see what they can do with the final couple of weeks of the season.
Well, he said he wanted to get Lekkerimäki more minutes, but needed to find chemistry with a centerman. We talked about it last week. There wasn't really a centerman to play with, a gifted offensive winger. Although I must say I was a little surprised he didn't shoot earlier in the shootout on Friday, Jeff. Coming off the glorious shootout goal, I would have thought he would have been your first or second guy in the queue against Columbus.
Yeah, I saw a lot of noise on socials about the selections. I had trouble getting too worked up there. Jake DeBrusk had scored in Jersey, had scored earlier this season, and your leading goal scorer. Brock Boeser just is one of those guys throughout his career, has not been much of a shootout guy. So people were like, well, but he's got 24 goals. Yeah, but sometimes some players just aren't cut out for shootouts. Pia Suter had the opportunity in New Jersey. He didn't score. Connor Garland in his career, when he got traded to Vancouver, guys, I remember he was right up there with Jonathan Taves among active players and their shootout conversion rate. He just hasn't had many opportunities here because there were a lot of guys in front of him. So, I do think that the coaches go by the numbers more than an in-game hunch and this idea of riding a hot hand because people were saying, Räty had scored twice in the game in the third period. Why wouldn't he go? We don't know how deep you would have had to go in a shootout to see Räty, but really, my issues with Friday night run a whole lot deeper than the batting order in the shootout. They should have won that game and won it going away much earlier than it ever getting to overtime or the skills competition. But, was it the New Jersey game where Rick Tocchet gave credit to Marco Terenius for his work as well? And so, some of the things that go into shooter selection, I think are things that maybe the average fan just doesn't see and isn't privy to all of the conversations that go on behind the scenes.
Some people were taking issue with just the ferocity late in the game yesterday versus the Jets after they went up 3-1, that there wasn't any pushback. Do you think, given that this is a pretty diminished team, like if it's the same skaters that are available because the injured players are not coming back, do they let down now when they know that they're right up against the mathematical wall here? Do you think the Canucks have any fight left? And again, it's not because, hey, they can still make the playoffs necessarily, but, is there a risk here where they lose a bunch of games because, the fight is officially over?
Well, sure, for that reason, but also starting on Sunday night, and Sunday is back-to-back, you got Vegas, you've got Dallas, you've got Colorado, you got Vegas again. The schedule doesn't let up for the Vancouver Canucks. Like Seattle and Anaheim at the outset of this 3-game homestand, those seem like the gettable games, but we've had this conversation too. Having watched this season unfold, is there such thing as a gettable game for the Vancouver Canucks? And so, Anaheim is pushing to the late stages here, and good young team that's moving in the right direction that the Canucks are going to have to be mindful of over their shoulder in the years to come. Seattle is kind of spinning its wheels and has all season, but I'm sure the Kraken will come in here. They've beaten the Canucks 2 out of 3 on the year and then had that massive comeback in December. So I think that yes, a letdown is possible. How does Kevin Lankinen bounce back from really his worst game of the season whenever he gets the net again? Because he just wasn't good enough, obviously, in Columbus the other day. And we'll see where it goes from here. But again, this idea that, now you're looking at some of your younger guys to really see this as an opportunity, maybe be a little selfish. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, but, see it as an opportunity for them to showcase what they can do over the final 8 games to sort of leave a message for the management and the coaching staff that they want to be part of this next season. And as to the late push in the third period, I don't know how it all works out. We know that building an NHL schedule is a Herculean task, but how exactly did the Vancouver Canucks wind up their 2 games in Winnipeg at the tail end of a 5-game road trip in January and a 6-game road trip here in late March? That was always going to be a tough task and a big challenge for the Vancouver Canucks. But at the tail end of this trip, as they're running out of bodies, and I just think the gas tank was empty, and Quinn was sort of the poster boy for that. He didn't have his offensive good stuff yesterday, and that's fine. This guy's laid it all on the ice all season long. And really, I think yesterday kind of didn't, the one opportunity where Teddy Bluger, of all people, had the chance to tie the game 2-2, had probably the best look for the Vancouver Canucks in the third period. Connor Hellebuyck swats that one away, and the Jets go back down the ice and score and ultimately pull away from the Vancouver Canucks. The Jets' best players were just a little bit better than the Canucks' best players yesterday. Hellebuyck outdueled Demko. Kyle Connor was probably the best skater and was in on 2 of their 3 goals. A relatively quiet afternoon for Boeser and DeBrusk and Garland. And, those are the guys that you're going to have to look to if you're the Vancouver Canucks. And so, end of the day, the Winnipeg Jets do what they do, 51 victories. Connor Hellebuyck gave up 1 goal over the weekend, guys. Had the shutout against Jersey on Friday, and they were lucky maybe in some ways to get the 1 on him, although Pia Suter rang that one off the post in the first period as well. So Pia Suter was going, but not enough guys ultimately at the tops of their game at the tail end of a long and onerous road trip.
Yeah, Hellebuyck back in the Hart Trophy conversation. He hadn't actually been great from New Year's on through the Four Nations break, but boy, he's been sensational here of late. As you know, Jeff, what's at stake, or how do you see the final 8 games playing out in terms of Tocchet's future, Jeff?
Well, I suppose when they're mathematically eliminated, at that point, the temperature is going to go up a little bit. He's had this insulation of, I'm locked on the task at hand, and totally fine. I'm prepared to ride with that. But when they're mathematically eliminated and those questions come, he can't say, I'm still focused on these games, even though there'll be a few on the schedule. And they may be another week, guys, before they're mathematically eliminated. But I think this organization owes it to the fan base to get this sorted out and let the consumer know the direction of the hockey club, and don't let this thing linger. And they've already raised ticket prices for next year. And in return, people are getting new comfy seats at Rogers Arena, and that part's fine. But I think people really, the paying customer, wants to know who's going to be calling the shots. What is this team going to look like? And we've said this all along. Like, can Rick Tocchet and Elias Paterson coexist? In their current forms. We don't know if Elias Pettersson is going to get his good stuff back and hit the ground running, but there's certainly been frustration, I think, on the part of the coach as he's tried to guide this team towards the playoffs with a star player that has so woefully underperformed this year. Does Rick Tocchet ultimately want to be here? I do believe when he has said, I want to see this through. I want to finish what I've started here. And I don't know if that means winning a Stanley Cup. That's the ultimate goal, obviously. But I do think that Rick Tocchet wants to move this forward and have more seasons like they had last year, certainly. So it's been frustrating. It's been challenging. Has to be disappointing. But my fear is that this is going to get into some sort of protracted contract negotiation that is going to play out for a while the customer is just saying, what am I buying into next year? Because ultimately the Vancouver Canucks have to sell to the fan base. They have not put a great product on the ice in the home games, particularly this year. Low event, low scoring. I'm not sure that people walk out of the building thinking they're getting their money's worth on a lot of nights. And the hockey club has to be mindful of that. They do. They're sort of at a precarious point in time right now where they have to remind themselves that people are paying big bucks. They are in the entertainment business ultimately, and they just haven't been a terribly entertaining team. So if you're ratcheting up the ticket prices, to what end? What product are you putting forth next year? And I think you owe it to your consumers sooner rather than later to give them a truer sense of what you might. I mean, the roster is not going to be filled out until July. I get that. But in the short term, I think people want a better sense of who's going to be behind the bench, who's calling the shots, and what might this team look like in terms of its style of play next season.
If you have tickets on either of these 3-game homestands, though, I mean, if you're a massive Brock Boeser fan, you're going to see him and say goodbye to him probably, aren't you? I mean, there's going to be some changes here on this roster.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, Pia Suter jacking his rate, and good for him with his performance, stepping into a tough situation with all these guys above him out of the lineup, and he was terrific. Led the club in scoring on the road trip, was consistent. Boeser, led the team in goals on the road trip, had the fantastic comeback buzzer beater in St. Louis, has picked up the pace a little bit here. So, yeah, I thought it was a reasonable trip for Brock. I thought Pia Suter, Kiefer Sherwood had a nice road trip as well. If I look to guys that ultimately underwhelmed a little on the road trip, Jake DeBrusk scored once, and it was a power play goal the other night in Columbus. Need more from your top end. Connor Garland had just the one goal that banked off him in the blue paint and jersey to force overtime. So it was a key goal, but in terms of making a whole lot else happen on the road trip, there wasn't much there. Dakota Joshua, I like Joshua on that line with Sherwood and Räty. Like, I think there's something in that trio. But individually, Dakota Joshua had just the one goal against the New York Rangers, and would have liked a little bit more from him as well. And then, Quinn, as we said, gives you what he can, just looks exhausted right now, didn't score on the road trip, had 5 assists in the 6 games, but has gone 7 without a goal for, when you take some of those other guys out, Quinn Hughes becomes one of your best options to actually put pucks in the net, not for a lack of trying, had the 9 shots on goal against the Rangers a week ago. But, all of a sudden you get the sense if Hughes and Garland and DeBrusk and Joshua, it becomes a pretty thin list of guys that you can actually expect and bank on to contribute offensively for the Vancouver Canucks. So credit to the guys that stepped up on the road trip. They did spread the scoring around, but it got a little thin at the top of the lineup from some of the guys that you would like to have seen just a little bit more from.
All right, Jeff. Well, we'll have many more occasions to discuss the summer,
to debrief
and
look
the
forward.
season and what's to come. Starting with later this week. So thank you for this, and we'll catch up then.
Yeah. Again, team day off Monday after the long road trip. So back to practice. And I do think practice will be worth monitoring just to see if any of these healthy bodies are anywhere close to the sheet of ice.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. You got your tickets to the big game. Why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability.
This segment brought to you by Harrison Price Gin. What? Yes. Resurrection Spirits has partnered up with Harrison Price. We've got a gin, folks. Go to resurrectionspirits.ca. You can shop around for any number of their spirits that they have, but you'll be drawn, I am sure, to the S&P logo on a beautiful blue bottle of gin.
Cobalt.
Perfect for the spring and summer season. And right now, if you use the code SNP, that's the ampersand and sign, SNP, you get $5 off, and delivery is available as well. But it's also, to talk about the two things that we just talked about, available here at the Wall Center. Mm-hmm. Well, it isn't, but Resurrection Spirits
Center
are.
Liquors, yeah.
And other fine locations around the Lower Mainland as well.
Caps draw 0-0 at TFC in a mud puddle.
2 hours of your life that you'll never get back.
I honestly say, like, when soccer teams travel vast distances for a 0-0 draw, I do sort of wonder whether if everyone could have got together on the front end and said, you know what, let's just call it a draw.
Yeah.
Nothing happens, so I shouldn't say that. The Caps once again generated chances.
Well, they dominated the game.
Yes,
but
against a really bad side.
But I would say that they didn't generate great A's. They had the ball the whole game. They were never really in, except for maybe the last minute.
This wasn't their Mona Lisa.
No. And that was a game where Ryan Gauld was missing.
Yes.
Because he can make something out of nothing, either himself or for somebody else. So that was a game. A road draw you never lose sleep over. It was what it was. You move on. I think that's all we say about that.
And that draw allows them to maintain first place in the Western Conference.
And in the league,
they face Pumas Wednesday at BC Place before a Saturday dates against the Colorado Rapids at BC Place. Both games at 6:30. Udvig, the center back, was out alongside Gauld and Adekube, so we missed him on Friday. And did you see the independent disciplinary committee hearing on John Herdman, how it ended?
Yeah, verbal admonishment.
A written admonishment. Yeah. Don't you do that again, John Herdman.
That was bad.
Oh, boy.
So
I hope Aviators will recover from this.
He's got to live for the rest of his life knowing that they said he was wrong.
Bad.
Yeah.
Telling a pet, bad. He produced a written statement, too. We're not going to read it because we think he's full of shit.
Drivel.
4 goals just over 4 minutes apart late in the fourth quarter. And then the huge defensive stand. Your Vancouver Warriors are in a playoff spot in the NLL. They host Albany Friday at Rogers Arena. This is the defending runner-up.
Mm-hmm.
And the trade for goaltender Christian Del Bianco has absolutely turned the season around. He stops 40 shots, his third straight victory. They haven't lost since they acquired him from Calgary. They beat Buffalo 13-12, so this was a nail-biter. They still aren't the most offensive juggernaut of the NLL. They're kind of like the Canucks. They don't score a whole lot, but man, do they defend. And what a great story this is turning out to be, where the pride of Coquitlam, the 2023 league MVP, Del Bianco, comes home and basically starts the most positive momentum this franchise has had in years, if not a decade plus. Good on you.
It might be a necessary move to sort of put them back on the sporting map in the Lower Mainland. So, yeah. Unfortunately, Matt, the same heroic story could not be authored over at the Langley Event Center.
No.
But nearly was.
I was listening to some of that game on the radio yesterday as I was doing some errands.
Giants down 6-0 going into the third period. Why would you listen? Well, 1, 2,
Well, I listened
3,
off the top,
4,
to be fair.
5 third period goals to make things interesting. 7-5 final, though. Alas,
Yes.
down 2 games.
And I was just going to say, they're down 2-0 in that series. And the next 3 are in Spokane.
Yeah.
Spokane was unavailable. The rink arena was unavailable this weekend because of the NCAA women's basketball tournament. So they decided to start at the lower seed, Vancouver, and then play 3 in a row in Spokane.
How fun would this game have been at the LEC yesterday? The shots on goal in a 60-minute non-overtime game. 57-37. So
57, that's a shot per minute.
Yes. In the playoffs, where you'd think, like in the NHL, things get a little tighter. Nah.
Don't we lock it down, Coach?
No.
Oh, my God.
Could not find the lock.
Someone's going to have a good practice here. If nothing else.
57-37. 37 seems like good defensive play by
Honestly.
the Chiefs.
In comparison, we only gave up 37.
Yeah.
The New York Yankees hit 13 home runs on the weekend, including 9 Saturday against former teammate Nelson Cortez, now the Milwaukee Brewers. And they're crediting, or at least outsiders are crediting, their new torpedo bats. A century and a half into the game of baseball, and we are coming up with new, potentially revolutionary ideas. Here's the thing, as Michael Kay explained on their broadcast. The analytics department became interested in Anthony Volpe, their shortstop's contact, that more often than not, he was hitting the ball on the label as opposed to the barrel. So they went about creating a different bat. They shifted weight towards the label and away from the ends. There's no rounded end on the bat. It's a flatter end. It's thicker where the label meets the handle. There's more weight in the middle, less on the 2 ends. The insane part is, this is legal by the baseball rulebook. The baseball rulebook specifies limits on bat length
And weights.
and limits on bat weight.
But where you put that
But
weight?
where you distribute the weight or the wood, where you distribute the weight is up to you.
It does have to reach you can't go smaller than 0.81 inches, I think, at the end.
Yes, there is a limit on the size of the
Handle.
or is it the knob?
Yeah, the end, however.
There's a lot of inappropriate jokes one can make here. Go ahead, fill your boots. Nevertheless,
But you know what this is, Matt, as I looked at it?
well, this is a better mousetrap.
But it already existed, Matt, in slow pitch and in softball. Softball has had effectively a version of this for years, for the reason that we have cavity back golf clubs. It creates a larger sweet spot where more non-pros are going to hit the ball. You go into your local rec store, you're going to see bats kind of shaped like the ones that the Yankees are using, except they're softball bats. And it's the same premise.
It is incredible that it took this long, actually.
Yeah.
In some ways. And now, if you're a Major League Baseball team, after what you saw on the weekend, you have no choice but to go out and at the very least investigate this, if not bring some of these bats forthwith into your clubhouse and say, guys, what do you think? If it means harder contact, if it means rather than hitting the ball down between the label and the handle for what is typically a soft liner, soft contact.
Maybe you get a shallow drop into the
exactly, as opposed to something that is struck with authority.
The one thing I wonder
is crazy.
Are we going to see more broken bats because now you've really reduced right on the handles?
I would think so.
So if you jam a guy, that bat's broken, you would think.
I would think so. I mean, does Major League Baseball step in from a player safety point of view? Do they step in from a competitive point of view? Do they just say, hey, Yankees are within the rules, other teams?
Now, the Yankees are built to hit homers anyway. Like they're going to have some 5-homer days, but if they have a bunch of 9-homer days, that's going to be
and apparently Giancarlo Stanton was using a similar bat in the playoffs, and nobody noticed. And he had the big playoffs for the Yankees, who won the AL. No, what an extraordinary story!
It really is weird.
Like when I first saw this. First of all, I saw the score in the game on Saturday. I'm like, oh my God, the Bombers are at it. And then I saw this clip about Michael Kay talking about it. Like, oh no, they've changed the bat. Like, what? They did what?
And as we often do, view things through a hockey lens here north of the border, I do wonder, like hockey sticks are so light now. And never mind the breaking issue, we've had that complaint for years. Moving away from that per se, are they going the wrong direction? Like no one wants a heavy stick. But is there a point? I know the slapper has gone the way of the dodo a little bit. Slappers are at an all-time low.
Yeah.
But do you sacrifice the slapper entirely by going with the sticks that are currently being used? Does somebody in the hockey stick industry go, is there something for us to learn here?
If you make sports equipment that involves using a club versus a scoring instrument,
yes,
I think this absolutely has to get you thinking a little bit.
Like I haven't
golf clubs, hockey clubs, cricket bats. Like
I don't follow hockey stick technology very much, but like, does anybody do blade heavy sticks? Like where the blade is kind of abnormally weighted? Like I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe that's already happened, but interesting.
Taylor Pendrith was leading the PGA tournament in Houston after a round. Weekend scoring continues to be an issue for the Canadians.
Well, one dud round.
He shoots 70 on Saturday when everybody goes low. It was lift, clean, and place on Saturday, and that was enough.
He played great yesterday.
Yeah,
Sunday was great.
Yesterday.
But you did yourself in with a dud round. It's too bad. He was
finishes tied for 5th. And you may have seen our old friend Adam Hadwin of Abbotsford a week ago at the Innisbrook course down in Tampa Bay, the Copperhead course, where he has won his lone PGA Tour event. He got frustrated, swiped out a sprinkler. Sprinkler went off.
Oh, no.
Started flooding an area beside the green. Poor Adam was then, I mean, it looked like a Looney Tunes, cartoon where he's trying to
dam the
exactly
plug the dam.
To plug the dam, standing on the sprinkler, getting all wet, looking for help.
Adam.
Well, a photo posted this weekend by the social media team there at Innisbrook and the Copperhead course, their grounds crew. A big thank you to Adam and Jessica Hadwin for paying for that sprinkler head and buying our staff lunch. That was a great touch, and our staff loved it.
It's good recovery.
Well done, Adam and Jessica. Jessica, of course, is a must-follow on Twitter. She was calling it Sprinkler Gate, having some fun with it. But what I loved about it is the Canadian comes out and Adam immediately.
Yes.
Oh, no, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, gosh, what am I going to do now?
And it's too bad because he's not been playing
Because a
well.
lot of guys would have stormed off. And Adam was like, no, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to see how much of this water I can redirect.
So he's 8 under going into Sunday. He's not going to win the tournament, but he's got a chance for a good check and a top 20, maybe even a top 15. And he goes over par, where if he had just, hit the course average of 68, 69, shot a 3 under, he's at 10 under. He would have been tied for 18th. Mac Hughes played well, by the way. He was 10th. So 2 Canadians in the top 10, and maybe it should have been 3 in the top 20 if Adam has a better round.
Poll question results, Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Friday. We asked you whose future with the Canucks are you most worried about? The options here were Boeser, Chytil, Paterson, Tocchet. Winner was? Boeser, Chytil.
Paterson.
No, Chytil.
Chytil.
54%.
So they went humanitarian.
Yeah, they went
okay.
humanitarian. Paterson, 18%, finished second. Boeser, 14%, just above that line. Tocchet, 14%, just below that line. Lots of write-ins for Quinn Hughes. We get that as the existential question with the franchise. We were thinking a little bit more about the immediacy of this summer. Of course, one of those players is a UFA. One has concussion issues. One may get traded, and one has a team option that he may, I don't think he's going to accept. PG Lee says, Chytil worried for his health on and off the ice. I've had one. Post-concussion, still dealing with the effects 2 years later. I don't know how many he's had, so hopefully he's going to be okay. Salt and Paprika, future with the Canucks at CP40 as he could be a franchise killer for the next decade.
And that's going to be the worry here is, if this is not a transformative summer, boy, the Canucks are in for it.
Yeah, future in general is Chytil. He says concussions are awful. Yes, they are. And Skridler says, my future as a fan. We hear him. Other than the omission of Hughes on the poll question, which really not an error or omission. We understood what we were asking, what we weren't, but we'll throw you a bone.
We were asking for second place.
Yeah. Well, we were asking for the immediacy. I don't think the Hughes thing is coming to a head this summer.
Right. There's that
Could be
too.
wrong.
Yeah.
I don't have any other errors or omissions. So if you're seeing nothing, thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local.